Hi, this might help in doing the intervention treatment project. So if you go to our week 9 in our 220 module in Canvas, go down to Learn More here, and you'll see this file says Sample Goals and Expected Outcomes. Click on that. And then here, Dr. Reyes gives us a number of different options, or examples, I mean. So here she defines the goal, just definition, and definition of objective or expected outcome, and then gives an example. In this example, it's of a client who's presenting with anxiety, alcohol abuse, and social isolation. So for this, the first goal is to decrease symptoms of anxiety. Second goal, use harm reduction program to decrease alcohol consumption. You could also say the goal is to decrease alcohol consumption. Goal 3, decrease social isolation. All right, so once you've identified the goals based upon your assessment, then you're going to talk about the expected outcomes. Notice how they're written here. So for the decreased symptoms of anxiety, the expected outcome. So this is how will you know that they've been able to decrease their symptoms of anxiety? You'll know because the client will show a decrease in symptoms of anxiety by week 4. Notice how in this example there's a timeline about it so that both the client and the clinician are aware of the pacing of this. So client will show a decrease in symptoms of anxiety by week 4. Starting week 2, she will journal. Cognitive technique. This is more for your benefit, the parentheses. On a daily basis to reflect the triggers and how to manage them as well as symptoms. Example, monitor agitation and use cognitive techniques to reduce fear and insecurity. Now that example you might actually put in the treatment plan because it's a way for both of you to acknowledge what those symptoms are. By week 5, there will be improvement in daily functioning. When you're doing this in other settings that may not use the goal and outcomes format, you might instead be focusing on the actual behaviors or symptoms. So for example, expected outcome might be client will show a decrease in symptoms of anxiety, but then underneath that you might say client will monitor their agitation 3 times a day using the journal. So that might be. Then the second goal is use harm reduction program to decrease alcohol consumption. Or often you'll see the goal as decrease alcohol consumption. But underneath that, we need to know, well, how are you measuring that? How will you know that they've decreased alcohol consumption? Expected outcome. For goal 2, starting week 2, client will begin to reduce drinking from 5 drinks a day to 2 drinks a day, continuing to decrease from 2 drinks a day to 1 a day, and by week 5, only 2 drinks a week. He will also attend AA meetings and find or use a sponsor. So you can even get more specific. You can say the goal, number 2, is to decrease alcohol consumption. And then you can state that client currently drinks 5 drinks a day. In the first week, client will decrease to 2 drinks a day. And then you can go down that way. And then the attending AA meetings or finding a sponsor can also be listed as different steps as well. Goal number 3, decrease social isolation. Expected outcome. How will you know that they've decreased social isolation? Well, the client will increase social support by week 3. I would need to define what social support is. This includes making 1 friend by week 2. Client will resume daily functioning related to interpersonal activities by week 6. Personally, this is a great example, and for me, I would want it to be even more detailed. So it might be decrease social isolation as the goal, and then how will I know that they've decreased it? Client will talk to 1 friend by next week. And then I would probably say then this by week 2, client has reached out to 2 friends. You get the idea. And client will resume daily functioning related to interpersonal activities by week 6. To me, that outcome is a little vague, so I would want it to be more specific. But what you're seeing here is there's a big variation range on what people consider to be good outcomes. The main thing is you want to both be in agreement of what the problem is, the overreaching problem, and in this situation, the overreaching problem was anxiety and alcohol abuse and social isolation. Those were the big problems. And then you're chunking it down. So first you want to address probably the most pressing one, which is usually the one you start off with first. So you usually name the biggest problem first. And that would be their anxiety, which we're assuming here is also leading them to do self-medication with alcohol to decrease their anxiety. The decreased socialization, we're assuming is part of an outgrowth of their anxiety, and also happens because of their drinking. So if we can address the anxiety first, and then how they're self-medicating, or many clinicians see this opposite. They would see that you have to address the self-medicating first and then the issues underneath it. And then decrease the social isolation, which is perhaps contributing to their anxiety or their ability to use self-medicate with alcohol. And the hope is also that by decreasing social isolation, reaching out to people that they really trust, that it would address the anxiety as well. So think of each objective as a step that they are going to take into to address the larger goal. So the goal is, I don't want to feel crappy. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Those are the expected outcomes, is that I'm going to be able to do this. I'm going to ride my bike more. I'm going to talk to friends more. I'm going to journal. For this exercise in your own self, you're mindful of the fact that you're going to do interventions that are consistent with cognitive behavioral therapy.